Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Luis Campos Garcia, Arts Education Director at Soul Collective Arts and Cultural Center in Sacramento, California. Tonight, we're going to have an amazing talk by a couple of great people. Let me tell you a little bit about Soul Collective. Soul Collective is an arts and cultural center. We focus on art, culture, and activism. We have a very diverse programming from workshops, classes, talks, music performances, art exposure experiences, art making activities, uh, training, uh, as well as many community members use the space that we have to do different things like practice mexica, Aztec dance, or drum circles, as well as many other activities that right now we have on a hold because of the pandemic, but we have been providing some virtual workshops like this one that we are gonna have today. And before starting, let me present our amazing guest. Today, for this talk, Economies of Resistance, the Afro-Mexican Women of Chacahua, Inner Day Communities, we have the guest Tarisse Iriarte and Fernando Armenghol today with us. They're going to be talking about the different work that they have been doing over there in Mexico. And this talk will be a dialogue about the ways in which Oaxacan photographer Fernando Armenghol and Afro-Puerto Rican curator Tarisse Iriarte are co-creating with the Afro-Mexican women of the coast of Oaxaca. Oaxaca's rich history offers an opportunity to explore infinite realms of cultural life in a community made of resilient and powerful people. As arts activist, curator, and agriculturalist, Tarisse Iriarte dedicated her curatorial research to learning alongside Afro-Mexican women who are creating local economies to sustain their community. Fernando and Tarisse are documenting Afro-Mexican women, farmers, fisherwomen, and healers in the region of Costa Chica, Mexico, who continue to preserve sustainable agricultural practices, fishing tradition, and ancient healing wisdom. Their work aims to honor the voice of the Afro-Indigenous women and the communities they proudly steward by the exhibit by exhibiting their work with an original video installation, photographic images from this project, local artwork, and a living archive. Tarisse Iriarte T is an arts advisor, organizer, activist, and beginning farmer originally from Brooklyn, New York, with Afro-Caribbean roots from Cuba and Puerto Rico. She's simply known as T in her beloved communities. T is what happens when a human loves art, the earth, and justice. She's a proud Afro-Puerto Rican working diligently on the global liberation of our people across the diaspora through arts and agriculture. T curates exhibitions that profoundly contextualize the intersections of diasporan arts, land reclamation, and social justice. Fernando Armenghol is an independent photographer that collaborates with important artists, printed media, non-governmental organizations, and foundations in Mexico. Part of his work is based on visual experimentation with new tendencies in the graphic representation applications in contemporary art. Participating in workshops that master, like the one with master photographer Graciela Iturbide. I had the opportunity to collaborate with her in some of her workshops and also helping her cataloging her work. And Fernando's most recent works are focused in the documenting the Afro-Mexican communities in Oaxaca and Guerrero to help visualize and to keep a photographic memory of them. Uh, Now I would like to just give the welcome to Tarisse and Fernando, and they're gonna be talking. And after their talk, we're gonna open this for Q and A's for in case you want to ask anything else. So with no more for me to say, let's welcome Iriarte and Fernando. Thank you very much.
Hello, good evening, saludos to everybody. I just wanted to say that something real quick. Can everyone mute their phones, or mute their devices, because I can hear like a lot of noise in the background. Um, but I just wanted to say hello and thank everyone for supporting my curatorial research, encouraging me, and showing a lot of love along this journey. This has been like a really, really powerful and meaningful journey for me to do this curatorial work. I just want to thank Estudio Abierto, which is where I did my curatorial research at an art residency that I was awarded in 2019. But because of the pandemic, I had to postpone that. And so I was able to go this August and spend 30 days in Oaxaca, and it was my first time in Oaxaca. But upon going there, I applied for, in my residency, applied for an opportunity to work specifically with Afro-Mexican, the Afro-Mexican community, because I know that the diaspora is a really important part of who I am in my social justice work, but also agriculture, arts and agriculture is a part of who I am in my work. So yeah, without further ado, I want to kind of share some of the things that I worked on. So I was at Estudio Abierto in Oaxaca Centro for 30 days. And during that time, I had an opportunity to travel to the coast of Oaxaca, which is 7 hours from the um, the central part of Oaxaca. When I traveled those 7 hours, I was able to meet with individuals and learn about the various communities and how big Costa Chica is. And Costa Chica is where there is a population of Afro-Mexicans. In the census, they were recognized as just negra or negro, but in now recently, they are identified as Afro-Mexicans, and many of them are descendants of um, enslaved people or migrants for many generations. And so when I traveled to the coast, I was able to go to a place called Zapatalito. And Zapatalito is where I first started my interviews with women who are fishermen, fisherwomen, who carry the tradition of fishing um, and there is it's mostly women who carry the tradition over multiple generations. So they have an opportunity to do commercial fishing at a scale that allows them to sell the fish that they catch. And fishing has always been known as a more masculine, um, male-dominated sort of field of work. But these women are a central part of that community, and they are creating economies and collectives within those communities to radicalize and create spaces where women are the central focus doing this work. And so I had an opportunity to speak with many of them. Um, and I focused on three particular people. Um, and then also had an opportunity to interview a woman, Doña Rosa, who is a farmer. So just to take it back a little bit, my research began with focusing on Afro-Mexican farmers. Upon my arrival to Oaxaca, I discovered that there wasn't a significant amount of Afro-Mexican women farmers. What I found is that women were creating various forms of economy within their communities as collectives in solidarity to challenge the system and create the work to sustain their communities, whether it's food sovereignty or whether it is through fishing tradition, or whether it is through healing practices and ancient ancestral wisdom. So the first image that you see on the screen is Doña Francisca. Doña Francisca is from Cerro Hermoso. She's an Afro-Mexican woman whose family has lived there for generations in that particular pueblo. And she's shared with me that her passion for cultivating the land is her connection to the ancestors. And I had an opportunity to meet other people in her collective. There's groups of women who are part of her collective. It's actually 3 women who started the collective and developed the collective into what it is today. This is an image that Fernando took of Doña Francisca when he had an opportunity to connect with the community as well. She is here showing the flowers, the beginning of the Jamaica, the hibiscus plant, and how they go, what procedures they use to basically cultivate the plant. And the next image is actually harvesting the plant before packaging it and drying it out so that they can sell it. And this is pretty much how these women are taking care of their families and taking care of their communities. As you may imagine, there are not a lot of resources being funneled to these particular communities, and they have been marginalized for as long as they've existed, and by the larger Oaxacan community and by the government as a whole. And so this is their way of resisting and creating new forms of work for themselves, but also for providing for their communities. So these harvests of hibiscus flowers go a long way to markets, to beyond just Zapatalito. The previous image was Doña Rosa. Doña Rosa is an Afro-Mexican woman who asked her family, she's the 2nd generation in that particular community. And she started that collective as a way for her and the other women to empower themselves. And I had an opportunity to talk to Doña Rosa about her work. And actually, while I was there, her son was sick from COVID. And so my interview with her was like 10 minutes long because she, again, and I'm very grateful that she allowed me the opportunity to speak with her and to talk to her about her work and the important work that she's doing in her community and continues to uphold her community. While her son was actually suffering from COVID and was in very serious and critical condition at the time. And again, you know, this is where the healers come in, because her son was not able to get access to the resources he needed in the hospital. So she was able to bring him home and nurse him back to health, which he is still recovering at this time. Again, this is another photo of Doña Francisca, who is in the collective with Doña Rosa, who's the previous image. And this is a harvest and a studio pic that Fernando took of her to capture her in all her beauty and grace. And she was also very graceful. And these photos will later be in an exhibition. So there's many more photos to show you, but I wanted to kind of give you the faces behind the women that we had an opportunity to co-create with and to connect with along this journey. These are the women that are part of that collective. And those are women that live in the town of Zapatalito y Cerro Hermoso. And a lot of the work that they do is specifically in that town, but the work goes beyond and transcends beyond that particular area. So these are the farmers right here. This is Christina. I had the distinct pleasure of meeting Christina in Zapatalito as well. She is incredible. She's a single mother raising 3 children. And she is a second generation pescadora, which is a fisherwoman woman. And she goes to the lagoon at 6 a.m. and fishes and provides for her family in that way, but she also sells in the commercial markets. In Mexico, there are large markets that are similar to bazaars where many merchants get together and during the week and throughout the weekend to sell their goods. And she participates in those markets. And she told me that it taught her mother, she learned from her mother how to be independent and how to create ways of life for herself that will sustain her, into her old age. And she that really admires her mother, who was also a pescadora in that particular community. Vivi, who was my photographer there, took the photo of Christina, and I was basically telling Christina jokes and she started laughing. And so the previous image, if you go back, that's the Laguna is where she does all her work. And we were, she was a little stressed about having to enroll her son in school that day because she had to walk a mile and a half just to get to the space to enroll her child. So she was a little stressed. So I just wanted to share some positive energy with her and let her know that, she's supported and bring her to her happy place, which was the lagoon. And put a smile on her face. The next image is an image of me interviewing her. Previous image, please. Yeah, this is when we were deep into the interview and we were talking about how she got to this place of learning. Actually, even though her mother is a pescadora, she didn't learn from her mother. She had other women come to her and teach her how to fish, how to clean the fish, how to package the fish. And I had an opportunity to eat some of her fish and actually break bread with her. And it was absolutely amazing and delicious. And so I'm very grateful to be able to be in community with her and learn about her journey. But Christina actually was one of the primary people that I was co-creating with and working beside in Zapatalito. This is Doña Rosa again, and this is an image taken by Fernando as well. And it's a studio pic with her jamaica, which is her harvest of hibiscus, and just kind of highlighting, the powerful work that she's doing and providing for the community through her harvest. This is the community of Zapatalito. Many of the women in the community, people were so helpful. Obviously, I'm a foreigner coming here. I don't know a lot about the community in terms of being, they're studying, and they were very open and very loving and very welcoming. And I learned a lot from the neighbors. People were like, well, you can talk to such and such, and you can talk to this person. But Christina is well known in her community. So it was, for me, in terms of my curatorial research, it was great to be able to navigate those spaces with her. And even when I went back to the community for the second time and took another 7-hour bus back 2 weeks later, I was able to come into that community and be welcomed with open arms. This image is of Brihada's granddaughter, who is learning the tradition of being a pescadora. Her name is Mari Cruz. actually Mari Carmen, and she is learning the ancient traditions of how to clean it, how to catch the fish. And so this photo was taken as she was bringing the fish back to the house to clean it. And I asked, during the time that I was interviewing Brigada, I asked her, what does she think about passing those traditions on to the next generation? And what does that look like? And does she think it's important for the next generation to learn these things? And I had an opportunity to talk to Mari Carmen as well. And she said that, she thinks it's important for her to learn from her grandmother, but also to be able to do for herself and her community. And these are the fish that they caught. And they have an outdoor oven where they literally grill this fish again. And I had an opportunity to eat with them as well. And I can tell you it was well worth it. An open fire grill. And I don't have the picture in here, but the open fire grill is a grill that they built in the back of the house. And this is where they do it. Also had some images, I don't know whether, but I had some images of how the fish is actually cleaned and dried out in the sun prior to them serving the fish and prior to them being packaged as well. So there is an ancient tradition where they're wrapped in banana leaves and dried out. The following image is the last person I was able to interview. I was able to expand my research to a broader lens that speaks more to individuals outside of the Zapatalito community and speak to other traditions that allow them to resist in their own ways. And so I traveled another 3 hours to a place called Pinotepa. And Pinotepa is an amazing Afro community with a very strong history of African descendants. Here, pictured here is the curandera, who's a healer. She was the last person I interviewed, and it became like a full circle moment for me because she was able to tell me so much about her family and her coming from a family of healers. And then when I asked her questions about when her journey in healing started, she told me that it started in her grandmother's lap, because she was there is when she first learned how to smell the herbs, how to identify the herbs, how to make plant medicine, how she watched her grandmother heal other people in the community. I had a 40-minute interview with her. I think she was my longest interview, and she was so proud of the work that she does. And she told me about the various things that she's done during COVID to help her community. Because again, a lot of people that don't have access to either the hospital or doctors, or don't have healthcare. And so but also people trust community healers because they are using ancestral wisdom to heal the people and work with people in their community. And so she had me smelling the herbs. She taught me the difference between the different plants she was growing. She walked me through her garden after the on-camera interview. She told me I can come and learn from her anytime. And she also was teaching a young woman in the community at the same time about what she's growing. And the young woman has a father, which is how I connected to her, has a father that is suffering from diabetes. So much of the plant medicine that she was providing was actually being passed on to him. Upon my arrival there in Pinotepa, which again is another 3 hours. So I had to wait for another bus to get to this area. So 7 hours. And then, the next day I had reached out I'll take it back a little bit. My neighbor in the area that I was staying in Puerto Escondido, connected me to his daughter via Instagram. His daughter is a student. His daughter connected me to a professor in Pinotepa. The professor then connected me to Doña Gloria, who's the healer here. So again, everything was a very, very loving, welcoming, encouraging process. Once they learned about what type of research I was doing, once they learned about why I was doing it and why I wanted to tell these stories, they were very supportive and very, very encouraging in that. And just, you know, centered me in that and provided me with everything I needed to complete the project. This is her harvesting herbs that she wanted me to identify in her. She was kind of testing me to see if I recognize the herbs that she taught me. So she's pulling the herbs, and she's also getting herbs for the professor, Israel. His name is Israel, and to help him. And he's in terms of his illness, I didn't realize until I arrived, and one of the women in the community had informed me about how sick he was, or how sick he is. So any and everything that I did in this community, I made sure to donate back to the community. I made sure to bring supplies, bring PP, COVID supplies, masks, things like that, because I know going into these communities that many of the individuals don't have the things they need to stay healthy during this COVID period and this pandemic. So I was very grateful for their graciousness in allowing me to even come into their homes and interview, or in their yards, or in their gardens, and in their farms, to talk to them. And yeah, that's it. That's the women. I mean, there's much more. Again, these images will be part of an exhibition in the spring, but I wanted to kind of introduce you to who these individuals are and what they are doing to shift the paradigms in their particular communities. And I think it's really powerful that it's women in particular who are the central part of these economies. So thank you for listening. If you have any questions, I'm open.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tarisse. I'm not sure you would like to have the questions at the end, and then we give a chance to Fernando to share
Yeah.
his experience. Thank you very much. And also, you have questions, you can either at the end unmute yourself, or if you have questions right now, you can start putting those questions on the chat room, so that way we will have them here and ready. And thank you very much. Fernando?
Hi. Well, thank you for the opportunity. I'm so glad to be here with you guys. And well, I'm a photographer, documentalist, and a documentary photographer. And I have been working with a community since 2008, specifically in Oaxaca, in very different regions, like in the valley of Oaxaca and the north of Sierra. And in this case, I started to develop this project in the coast of Oaxaca with the Black communities. For me, it was very interesting how to see the marginalizing situations in that side. So for me, it was very interesting to develop this project specifically with these people because there are many situations and problems and with the Black people here in Mexico with the Afro descendant. So my photography project, it has it's a totally artistic side. Um, it's part of the poetry and visual aesthetic. So I can show you the first one, if please, Luis. It's part of this imaginary with my work. I love the portrait, and I think the most important thing in this case for me, it was the portrait and the poetry and the daily life. The second one she is a fisherwoman or pescadora. She lives in Chacahua, and I started to develop this project in Chacahua because I have a good connection with the people there, and it was great to work with them, and it was great to live with them. And that people, I know that people, so it was a huge connection with them, and this is part of this civilization that I had in that places. So as I said, I started to in Chacahua, and after I moved to another places. And Collantes, it's near to Pinotepa, it's a big city. And after I went to El Chivo, it's and that's it. Um, I need more time for go because I need to finish this work, and I couldn't to finish this work because the COVID came, right? So I need to develop this project, and this is the beginning. Is my process. So the next one is another portrait for a fisherman. And another picture, she's from the Chivo. And another one is like a good friend. She's name is Daisy. She's a wonderful woman and a strong woman. And another is a fisherman, Chuck. And the next one is a healer in Collantes. I wanted to develop these pictures specifically with the healers. They're it's part of the culture of the Afro-Mexicans. The another one is a detail. And the next one is a file of the family with this family, Chacahua. They shared with me their pictures. The another one is like it's a fisherman. And the next one is he's a chala. He's a transsexual. And for me, it's very interesting to capture the diversity, the sexual diversity too, with the Black people in the coast of Oaxaca. So okay, that picture is part of this project, and of course I have more, but I would like to show you all, but it's only a few big pictures. So I don't know, any question? Or what's the next, Luis?
Oh, thank you very much, Fernando and T. It's really interesting to learn of the projects that you have been working on. The images are really amazing.
Thank you.
And yeah, I would like to open the space for questions for people to ask anything. So feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question, or you can put it in the chat. But something I want to really enjoy about the black and white photographs is always seeing the photographs in black and white gives them something else, something special. Why, Fernando? Why do you feel attracted to having the pictures in black and white?
When I started to like a practicing the photography, for me the film is the most important. And after, of course, I work with digital images right now, but in that moment I was very fascinated with the black and white, and my formation in the beginning for me always it was with black and white. So for that reason, is the main reason, I think. And the second one, black and white is a kind of color, because you've got scale grises. Of course, for me, it's a color too, and that is a reason for me, and because the black and white is powerful for me, and it's a I don't know how to say that. It's like a wonderful connection between the photography and me with black and white specifically.
Thank you very much. We have one question by Eli. Says, "What movement in your journey brought you the most personal joy?" Uh, I guess a question for both of you, Fernando and T.
Please, T.
um, I think one of the most powerful moments was actually being with the curandera and having that, being welcomed into her home and to learn from her and be her student during the interview, because I came in with the intention of doing maybe a 10-15 minute interview, because I didn't know like what the protocol was in terms of COVID and how people were feeling. And I had heard in Zapatalito that it had started to spread a bit more. So I, wanted to be respectful of the community, and didn't realize, but she welcomed me like a family member. She taught me, she helped me like fill out some of the internal questions I had about plant medicine. So I think that was one of the more powerful moments in terms of bringing me joy. And I also met Claudia Lopez, which is an amazing photographer, a maestra. And that was another beautiful moment because she was a kindred spirit. I have probably never met someone who was so close to my energy and completely from another culture. But when we talked and I was welcomed into her home, she talked about spirituality a lot. And yeah, she was really welcoming, and I was able to learn more about her photography in the studio visit, but it was much more than a studio visit. It was such a special connection in terms of learning how she is using her creative work and also documenting spirituality, but also she's an earth keeper as well. So she's also cultivating the land, and she's also doing agricultural work within her community. And some of her photography was documenting women who were do a cleansing ritual once a year in the river, in a river outside of Oaxaca. And I was able to see those images and see the joy of the intergenerational communities come together, and women come together and do the cleansing ritual under a full moon. And for her to be able to capture that with such love and intention was amazing. And just to know that she pours her love and energy into similar work that I do was very powerful and joyful to me. So thank you for that question.
I'm agree with T. With the connection with the people, for me, in my case, is the most powerful moment. Specifically when I have the camera in front of them and taking portraits, and to know how is their life, how is the daily life, the landscapes. You know, it's the hard work that they have. So this hard situation with them, because sometimes it's hard, but for me, I think it's the great connection that I had with the families, with the women, with the men, with the fishermen, with the healers, with the children. Is a human sense, I think.
Thank you very much. We have also another question, a comment and question. Thank you both. This is amazing. Is there anywhere we can see your work, like social media, website?
Um, the first place you can see my work will probably be on my social media page, Curated Concepts. I've been doing a very good job of posting on the actual page, just mostly stories, as I learned how to kind of put together reels that kind of capture various moments, but also in the form of an exhibition in April, and so collective, and then hopefully in New York as well. And then Fernando and I are applying to a biennial called Mexicali, and Mexicali is focused on ironically on agricultural this year. So it's arts and agriculture, and so the photography is going to be also featured in that, should we be selected. But those are some places that you can find mine, and obviously Fernando can speak more to his. And I also want to say that one of the other moments of joy is connecting with Fernando, porque I actually, it was again a very serendipitous synchronicity, because someone in my stories actually posted something about Afro-Mexican, and they didn't even know I had got awarded that residency, and they were talking about it in their stories. When I clicked on their story, which I rarely watch, this person's stories, and then but something in my spirit told me to watch it that day. That day I was able to click on another page, and that brought me to Fernando, and this is prior to me going to Oaxaca. And again, this is my first time in Oaxaca. I'm meeting artists and I'm making connections, and my best friend connected me to another woman who connected me to other artists. And so it just kind of, it bloomed into this beautiful experience from there. But thank you, Fernando, for being on my team and collaborating with me and agreeing to collaborating with me when I jumped into your DMs. I appreciate it so much.
Thanks to you, T. It was a pleasure.
Oh, gracias.
Well, of course, I tengo my Instagram, bien de ojo, bien_ de ojo. You can watch my work there. Instagram.
Thank you very much. There are a couple of more questions. The images are beautiful. Did both of you seek out these communities specifically because of the African ancestry of the people? And the next question will be, how did these African origin communities came to be in this south part of Mexico? And also another question connected is, did the people talk about this? So feel free to
don't know if Fernando wanted to start this time or me. So the first question, yeah, for me, I was very intentional about seeking out um, Afro communities because I am so committed to telling the stories of the diaspora and co-creating alongside people in the diaspora. So of Africa, I am, of Caribbean descent and Caribbean roots in Cuba and Puerto Rico. And so I'm Afro-Puerto Rican, Afro-Cuban. So for me, that's an important part of our history, and it's an important part of um, carrying on that tradition of our ancestors. And so I am very much connected to my work in that. And so in going to another country and being able to learn about their ancestry and their culture, and learn how their people are creating in their own communities and surviving in their own communities was super important to me. But also just the sheer ingenuity of who they are as individuals showing up in their humanity. And that that meant everything to me. So that's some work. I also will be doing another curatorial residency and research in Costa Rica in November 15th through December 15th. I was also awarded a second one the same year, but again, COVID pushed that back. So I wasn't able to go that year to Costa Rica. But I'm very excited to also embark on a journey where I'll be able to co-create alongside Afro-Costa Ricans on the coast, the Pacific coast of Costa Rica, and help document and tell those stories as well of the tradition of Rastafarians growing chocolate in Limon, the Pueblo of Limon. So you'll be able to see much more of my work when I complete that part of the journey in that residency as well. But yeah, to just going back to your question, yeah, it was very intentional for me to specifically work and co-create alongside Afro Mexican the Afro-Mexican community, but specifically Afro-Mexican women.
I love the African culture, and in Mexico, the Afro-Mexicans is a very important issue for me, specifically talking about the photography. For that reason, I started with a curiosity, and after, as I say, I started developing this project in these communities for 10 years, more or less. But I started this personal work in 2008, 2018, 2017. Yeah, that is the connection for me in this sense.
Thank you very much. There is another question. Would love to hear T reflect on the systems of care witnessed, and for Fernando to talk about his approach to portraiture, thinking of moments where communities' connection to the natural world are represented in the photograph alongside leaves, water, etc.
Otra vez, por favor, Luis.
Yeah.
¿Me escucha?
Would love to hear T reflect on the systems of care witnessed, and for Fernando to talk about his approach to portraiture, thinking of moments where communities' connection to the natural world are represented in the photograph, alongside leaves, water, etc.
Well, the portraits is it has a imaginary, and sometimes I make sketches for the portraits, and I love to work with a natural positions, and after I think about the portraits and I want to make, so that's That's the only thing.
For me, the systems of care came a lot with food in particular. Like the first thing I was able to do upon going to Zapatalito specifically is I was able to break bread and meet the family of Brigida, who is like a well-known pescadora, and actually, talk to her and be welcomed into her home. Again, this is during a pandemic. But I'm very respectful of the space, very respectful of the home. She was very nurturing and providing the food, make sure that, we, after traveling, we were fed, we were nourished. She, gave ideas and talked to us about how she is able to work alongside other women. And that's part of her care as well, because she says that, she's able to buy things that she needs to run her part of her business and her fishing enterprise by supporting other women. And that was one of the questions I actually posed to her in an interview, is like, how do you support other women? How do other women support you and your work as y'all carry on this tradition? And yeah, me and the other photographer that I worked with, Vivi, and the host of the residency program, was able to sit down with her in our initial meeting and eat with the family. And that was a very important moment. And also just, again, another moment of joy that I felt in seeing how she cares for family. And also she talked about that in the interview, and why it's important for her to continue this work and caring for herself and caring for her family. She's like, the first thing she said is, I'm able to feed my family, but I'm also able to feed my community and extend that love to my community, and support other women while I'm doing it. And so that's all part of the system of care that she has in place, for herself. And then her daughter as well, Christina, who's the image of the woman smiling by the water. She said water is also something that, being near the water also is soothing to her. As a single mother, she is balancing quite a bit. So she was telling me that, she is finding ways to connect with nature and be in tune with herself while she's fishing, while she's at that water. And she said that's one of the most peaceful places she goes. And we got a chance to go to the beach together, and she was showing me where she prays and meditates and everything, and in Cerro Hermoso. And she was telling me about how all the restaurants closed during COVID, and how the businesses were not able to sustain themselves over there. So how she's able to sell to the people in the community, because they don't have the option of also going to those businesses anymore that have been closed by the ocean. And when I was there were actually 3 fishermen fishing there. But we sat on the rock and we talked, and it was just such a genuine connection. And her even telling me about her forms of care, self-care and self-love, and having those moments to herself, outside of having to be a mother and having to be in this collective in her community and having to wear many hats. She's able to come back to herself in that specific place near the water.
Thank you. There is somebody that wants to ask a question. Juan, do you want to mute yourself and ask the question?
Yes, thank you. I just want to say thank you so much for this presentation. Like, I study Afro-Mexicans too, so it's like really like interesting, and I love seeing what people do for this topic. It's not talked about a lot. But a question I had for Thea was, it's 2 parts. For the first group of women that you interviewed, when COVID happened, did that affect their business? And the second part to that is, I know the last woman you talked was a curandera. Did they have any specific like plants or any type of practices and specifically they used to help treat COVID for their community?
Great question. And thank you for the work that you're doing too, Juan. These are very important stories to tell, which is why I chose to, to do my part in this curatorial research. But I commend you for the work that you're doing as well, and documenting and telling these very important stories of the Afro-Mexicanas, Afro-Mexican community in general. But to answer your question, yeah, people, there were many businesses there. So there's collectives, and the collectives are collectives of women in that are doing cultivating as well. So one group of people that I was able to interview and connect with was through Fernando, his friend Vicente. Doña Rosa is Vicente's mother. Now Vicente is the person who got was in critical condition with COVID upon my arrival there. And this is why I learned about how bad COVID had affected this particular community. So Doña Rosa, again, cultivates hibiscus, Jamaica. So she's a farmer. And so there were times where she had to take off for weeks, and her collective wasn't able to pick up, and balance out everything in the business because she had to care for her son because he didn't get the proper medical care. So that was a huge, huge part of like me being able to have access to her, but also hearing that, this is why she is not able to do her work like she would typically do. And, again, I'm super grateful to her for allowing the interview. But when I think about, the ways in which these communities are so impacted in particular, because it's, again, marginalization, oppression, and many other things happening in that particular community, systems of oppression that impact their work. They're not getting any resources from the government whatsoever. So her having to leave her business to care for her son, to nurse him back to health after he spent a week and a half in the hospital, and the hospital didn't provide him with the medical attention he needed. He had to come back home and get, the care from his family. And so she was able to nurse him back to health, but it took time from her schedule to be able to also do her work and earn during that time. So it did affect her business tremendously. And then she had, other women in her collective who were also very supportive in helping getting her son back to nursing him back to health. And Vicente is such an amazing young man. He even offered, like, during the time that I couldn't get access to Doña Francisca, who's the person on the flyer, because everybody became, he explained to me that a lot of people became paranoid and almost like in panic, panic for, because they were afraid of COVID affecting the community and everybody becoming infected. So a lot of people just isolated. And so it was hard for me to get access to her to do the other part of the interview. So Vicente even offered to do the interview. Like, I formed the questions and he asked the questions to her, to Doña Francisca, because she's like a family member to him and his mother. And then, send the audio to me. So he was even willing, going through his own healing process, willing to extend that love and help to me and support. But his mother was one of the people whose businesses was impacted. And of course that collective, because it is a collective of 3 women. So when one is impacted, the others are impacted. In terms of the pescadoras, it wasn't impacted as much, but a lot of their shops were shut down because it was a government mandate where they could not access certain places to sell their fish. But what I will say in that part of that in Costa Chica, that people were very, very intentional about COVID protocol. So when they did enter businesses, they were very aware of people's being economically impacted, and people even just donating and supporting to each other when they could, helping each other, donate time, bartering. It was really beautiful to watch. in terms of like the solidarity within the community, given the fact that other businesses did not survive, but people were there for each other, and that was something that I really commended them in doing.
Thank you. There is a couple of more questions. How do you think we can highlight more of these untold stories across our diaspora, especially when the mainstream corporate media refuses to document and represent our diaspora in its full glory?
That is a beautiful question. And I don't know that I have like all the answers, but I will say, for my personal journey, like, that is the reason that I came into this creative work. You know, I think that, being a curator and an independent curator specifically allows me to delve into more of the stories that I want to tell, specifically around the diaspora. And we will always have people trying to minimize who we are as people of color, and specifically Black and Brown people, Black, Brown, Indigenous folks. And so I know that, our voices are stronger, our voices are more powerful. And so the more we collaborate, the more we co-create, and the more we think about the stories we want to tell and in around community, I think that, that is much more powerful and much more significant than corporate media could ever tell in terms of a narrative. Like, we have the power to share and tell our own narratives. And I think that the ways that we can highlight is to collaborate, is to share stories with each other, but also to think about why we're telling these stories, and actually expand our vision for why we want to tell these stories, and who's who has the voice to extend these different narratives to the world.
And there is also another question. If you had some advice for young people and old people who have many passions like art, combined with agriculture and farming or teaching or computer arts, what would you share?
I'm assuming that question is for me, part of it, because the photography is also the art, right? So what I would say is, for young people, continue to cultivate your creativity. Like, I think, you read, learn, we have such access to technology, but we also have access to our inherent gifts. And I think, I would encourage young people to tap into those inherent gifts and take time out to free write, take time to research people who influence you and inspire you, and take the time out to delve into your practice whenever you can. Not just in a school or academic setting, but outside of that as well. Take time to build with community members who are doing similar work, or people that, you admire in the community. And in terms of agriculture, same thing, bringing those worlds together, because nature is art, for me, and in my opinion. And so I think telling young people to delve into nature, I'm really big on intergenerational farming. And I would love to see, more young people learn about hydroponics, aquaponics, traditional plant medicine. And it was a blessing to be able to have a young person there with me when I interviewed the curandera, which I think I skipped over part of the earlier question, and asking Ruda was one of the plants she talked about a lot for healing during COVID. But in terms of like the farming practices, these are, again, this is ancestral wisdom that, you know, now more young people are coming back to. Here in Puerto Rico, I work with a lot of farmers that are much younger than I am, but they're also learning from older farmers who are aging out, who, you know, or older farmers who have been in their community and they come together and they learn in those spaces, and then just coming together for arts, culture, music, and different cultural organizations. And Puerto Rico is a very special place because we pride ourselves on that connection with intergenerational relationships, with multi-generation grandmothers, abuelas, bisabuelas, you know, and so on, and abuelos, you know, and tios that share in community and music. And, you know, our birthday parties are all about intergenerational. Like, so that's something that I really feel like young people should think about, and having access to some of the knowledge and wisdom, but also they can learn from each other. It's intercambio. It's like, you know, it's an interchange of young people learning from elders and elders learning from young people.
And there is another, I think this is the last question. This one is for Fernando. It says, Fernando, in my opinion, your photos hold a lot of narrative. Do you plan your photos, like positioning your subjects, or is it something spontaneous?
Well, I think I love to make sketches, and after I want to take that portrait. Sometimes I work with the both ways, with the natural positions, and sometimes I think about what I want to do with the portrait. So I work with both cases, and specifically I love with the natural positions or poses.
Thank you very much. And I think those are all the questions. Once again, thank you very much, Fernando and T, for doing this talk. We are going to be working on some more projects in the future. And thank you for everyone that joined us today for this amazing talk. And we will share the recording once again with everyone. We will probably send it through Eventbrite. Good night. Have a nice night. And this talk was amazing, and thank you very much.
Thanks to you guys, and I'm so glad to be here with you and sharing this moment. And thank you, Tarisse, for the invitation to show some pictures. And thank you so much for this opportunity. And I really enjoyed to hear you. And thank you so much.
Thank you to everyone for coming. I know it was a little late for some people because I know we're all on different time zones. So I really, really appreciate the love and extension of love that everyone brought to this space. Thank you for your intentional questions, and thank you for the love and support for future projects. I promise to keep you all informed on everything that I do, and all my curatorial research, as well as the exhibition production and practices that I have in the future. So thank you. Gracias por todo.
Thank you, everyone. Gracias a todos.
Sí. Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.
Bye.
Gracias.
Buenas noches.
Thank you.
Thank you.